This is Pleasant Valley State Prison in Central California, and what's called a sensitive needs yard, or S.N.Y. for short. It's supposed to be a relatively safe place to do your time, but that's all changed. This is home for Anna Ray Brown, doing 31 years for his part in a gangland killing.
I'm at the pinnacle, on top of my game.
He's also known as X-Rated, the street name he's used in the release of a dozen rap albums. In this video obtained by Fox 11 News, X-Rated, here in the black pants, is attacked by two knife-wielding inmates who want him dead. It sparks a small prison yard riot. He's slashed 7 times but survives. In this incident report, X-Rated tells investigators, "It was Northern Riders who stabbed me." Northern Riders, who use the Playboy Bunny as their symbol, are a prison-based gang composed of dropouts who left other gangs, came to an SNY yard seeking protection, and then formed a new gang. And the SNYs have gone from a haven for safety to a den of predators, says Central California gang investigator Robert Clayton.
I've had inmates request to go back to the main line, the general population, because they were more afraid of these S&Y gangs than they were of the gang they left prior. So we have guys that ask for protection all the time off of a protection yard.
In this case, these Northern Riders, all lifers, were allegedly extorting X-Rated to force him to produce a rap album of their own. Investigators say Northern Riders, who also use a falling star as their symbol, grew from 6 members to 800 in a decade, making it the fastest growing SNY gang. But Northern California investigator Mike Brody says, not the only one.
All over the state. There are dropout gangs for every ethnic group and every territorial group.
Brothers by choice, sucker-free, independent riders, cutthroat family, bad news banditos. Since the 1990s, the list has grown to more than 24 SNY gangs. Some have disappeared, but investigators say there are now SNY gangs at 22 of the state's 33 prisons. That's up from just 2 SNY yards that were first established in 1998. Gang investigator Billy Idroso worked the San Diego prison beat.
They're dangerous because what people don't realize is just because you're a dropout, it doesn't mean that you lost that mentality. You know, you still have that gangster mentality.
And here on these SNY yards, that means taxing, extortion, theft, drug dealing, assaults, and even murder.
It's just drama. That's all they are, is drama.
This inmate, who does not want to be identified, says he's been jumped a couple of times on SNY yards.
So wait for you to get your drugs out and come over and just take what you have. You're going to send money to my books, and if you don't, we're going to smash you.
Ironically, these SNY, or protective custody yards, are supposed to be safer than the main line.
It was a movement.
Dagoberto Noyola, known as Dago, says he's a founding member of the 25s, also referred to as Dos Cincos, Cinqueros, Pesetas, the Spanish word for a quarter, or simply the numbers.
It wasn't a gang back then, it was just a way of life for us because we had to survive.
It started, he says, with less than a dozen dropouts, all at odds with the Mexican mafia, who bonded together for self-protection here in Birch Hall at the California Institution for Men in Chino. That was 20 years ago.
You must understand it's an insane world with an insane set of rules here, and they change so much.
Dago says the 25s were tired of mafia politics.
You didn't adhere to their policies, you were an outcast.
Tired of doing hits on their own homeboys.
A gang is a gang. We're supposed to be a brother here, but it's like pretty much everybody throwing everybody under the bus.
And tired of paying the mafia a 1/3 cut on all the drugs they sold.
Nobody likes anybody else in their pocketbook.
The 25s, now the largest SNY gang with 1,500 members and associates, set up their own list of rules discouraging unwanted attention and homosexual activity, and demanding respect for each other, free of ridicule, and dedicated to wiping out the more established prison gangs.
M, AB, NLR, those are our enemies. That's who I war against.
The 2-5s grew along with an expanding pool of recruits as a record 30,000 inmates dropped out of their gangs during the past 12 years, all tired of traditional prison gang politics.
They're tired of getting used. You can't trust nobody. Your best friend will be the first one to stab you in the back.
Investigators say SNY gangs are more appealing with a structure and leadership that is loose. They're interracial. Members are allowed to flip in and flip out. But prison investigators warn the game is still the same.
Making money and controlling the yards.
That's led to an unprecedented number of riots and injuries on the supposedly safer SNY yards.
I think it all boils down to is you can't take that gangster out of that gangster lifestyle.
And investigators agree, here on the SNY yards at California prisons, there's a whole new evolution of gangs. What is even more frightening, say those who are following this phenomena closely, is that the influence and violence of the SNY gangs is already bleeding out into the streets. We'll have more on that story next Sunday. Chris Blatchford, Fox 11 News.
Record numbers of inmates are dropping out of gangs in the California prison system. They're flooding what are called sensitive needs yards, or SNYs. But now, those supposed dropouts have formed a new brand of gang. In part 2 of his report on SNY gangs, Chris Blatchford says they're now moving their criminal influence from the prisons to the streets.
Go in the same car, I'll pick up a bag, and bam.
Investigators say 5 members of the Northern Riders gang gathering in this Central Coast motel room are planning a robbery.
They'll have a bank within distance where the store's at, so they don't have to drive too far.
In this undercover video obtained by Fox 11 News, you only see Joey Cloud, known as Smokey. He has the word Rider tattooed in big letters across his neck, and the gang's symbol, a Playboy bunny logo, inked on his scalp. Gang investigator Mike Brody says Northern Riders meet every month in sessions called networking or council.
Everybody gets together. This is what I do. I know how to do robberies. I know how to steal cars. I got a connection for drug trade.
Investigators say Northern Riders were formed a decade ago behind prison walls. And it's the fastest growing group of a new hybrid of prison-based gangs composed of dropouts who left other gangs and went into protective custody on so-called sensitive needs yards, or SNY for short. Then, those dropouts formed new SNY gangs.
That's all they know is gang lifestyle.
Prison gang investigator Robert Clayton.
And we thought, well, we could just change that by opening up this yard and giving them opportunity to start over. But you could take the gangster out of the gang, but you're never going to take that gangster out of him.
Agents have identified as many as 24 of these new SNY gangs. All are recruiting from an expanding pool of 30,000 gang dropouts. That's 10 times more than a decade ago. Prison sources say gangsters are now dropping out at the unprecedented rate of 2,400 a year. Francisco Hernandez, also known as Frank Nitti, belongs to what is estimated to be the largest SNY gang, the 2-5s, also known as Dos Cincos, DC, or the numbers.
We got betrayed, disrespected, everything.
Nitti, who says he did a number of hits for the Mexican mafia before they stabbed him 16 times, explains he and other dropouts became disillusioned with the heavy-handed rule of traditional prison gangs, Mexican mafia, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi lowriders, and Black Guerrilla Family. Now, he's committed to 2-5 revenge.
Mexican mafia, I go against them now. So if I see one that's really active, I try to get him. I try to do whatever I could do to hurt him, whatever it takes. Murders, kidnapping, robberies.
And that, cops say, is now translating into a new brand of organized crime, SNY gang style.
We gotta have fools too that know how to steal cars.
And like these Northern Riders, growing influence and violence not only on prison yards,
In order to do something like that, we need a stolen car.
but out here in the community.
I never steal cars.
Cops say the Northern Rider heard talking in this video is also caught on camera during this home invasion robbery. Drug ripoffs at mafia-related stash houses are a favorite target. And the S.N.Y. gangs have a more even split of the take than more traditional mobsters.
The profits are spread amongst each other equally rather than one individual profiting from them.
Bunny tattooed Northern Rider girlfriends are used to open credit card accounts to fund buys of drugs and guns. And detectives say this Northern Riders crew, recently convicted and sent to prison, bought that contraband from a cartel member in the Central Valley. During a search of Maldito Mejia's residence, cops found narcotics and plastic baggies emblazoned with the NR Bunny symbol.
Wanting people to know that whoever bought that dope, that they were buying it from the Northern Riders for the purpose of creating fear and intimidation.
Frank Nitti says it's the same for 2-5ers.
Now it's like, man, everywhere you go, you see a 2-5er. We wear jerseys, wear DC hats. Now these days, there's a lot of 2-5ers in the streets.
We're starting to see a lot of them.
Gang detective Robert Morales says it was a 2-5er parolee who crashed this stolen car in Rialto. Eric Robledo, known as Mosco, a 2-5 tattoo hidden on his back, is now doing 5 years in prison after leading cops on a high-speed chase. At the end, he hit a guardrail, which swung back into a police car, injuring an officer. He then took off on foot.
We actually caught Robledo a block away, hiding inside of a garage. He then self-admitted to us that he was 2-5.
In San Bernardino, Peter Wino Amaya, a former 7th Street West Side Verdugo shot caller seen here in court, is accused in a plot to murder a gang dropout named Alicio Aguilar, known as Pequeño, also a 2-5er. Detective Bob Kelly.
We believe that he was in fact going to try to kill him.
A hit.
A hit.
Investigators say Wino was going to use these guns to do the hit. 8 other conspirators have already been convicted, and sources now tell Fox 11 News that Wino, who's been fighting the case and fell out of favor with the Mexican mafia, is bragging around the San Bernardino County Jail that he's now become a 2-5er. Detective Mike Martinez.
It's a Shark Tank, and if you're not at the top of that pyramid, you're going to be the shark that gets eaten.
And in West Sacramento, there's another example of S.N.Y. gang presence in the streets. Billy Wolfington and Shannon Silva, both affiliated with Northern Riders, are facing a possible death penalty. Detectives say here in the parking lot of this motel last September, in a dispute over a drug debt, the 2 parolees allegedly stabbed a Crip gangster to death.
Because everywhere you go, it's like you got S.N.Ys everywhere now. We're getting bigger now, you know.
Prison investigators say there's already evidence that S.N.Y. gangs have spread to other states, including Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. That's no surprise to Frank Nitti.
I like the thrill. I know what I'm getting into. I go out there and I do what I gotta do, you know.
Investigators, aware the phenomenon started here in prison, believe it's time to treat S.N.Y. gangs just like a prison gang. Lock down active members in high-security cells known as shoes, and implement a tougher screening process for gang dropouts seeking protection on S.N.Y. yards. One investigator tells us the worst thing we can do is pretend this S.N.Y. gang phenomenon is not a real threat. Chris Blatchford, Fox 11 News.